She was serving champagne at 30,000 feet over London, cocktails over New York, and dinner over Tokyo. And in each one of those cities, she had a man waiting for her to land. 3 boyfriends, 3 time zones, 3 completely separate lives. And for 2 years, not a single one of them had any idea the others even existed. Welcome to Corporate Chaos Scandals, the place for the most shocking and unbelievable workplace confession stories. From office drama to hidden secrets, nothing is off limits. Before we get into this, make sure you subscribe and like, because we bring you stories like this every week. Her name is Artemis Callahan. And before you make up your mind about her, and I know you already are, I can feel it, let me ask you to hold that judgment for just a moment. Because the easiest thing in the world would be to call Artemis a villain and move on. But the truth, as it almost always is more complicated than that. And the truth is what we are here for. Artemis is 31 years old. Born and raised in Cork, Ireland, the youngest of 5 children in a household that was loud and loving and never quite had enough of anything. Not enough money, not enough space, not enough quiet. Her father drove a delivery van. Her mother worked school hours at a primary school kitchen. They were good people doing their best in a small house on a narrow street, and Artemis loved them completely and knew from an age she could not precisely identify that she needed to leave. Not because she was ashamed of where she came from, but because she was the kind of person who could feel the boundaries of a life the way other people feel the walls of a room, and Cork was simply too small to contain what she was. She trained as a flight attendant at 22, passed her assessments on the first attempt, was assigned to long-haul international routes by 23, and from that point, from the first morning she walked through an airport in uniform with a wheelie case and a destination stamp in her passport. She never really looked back. By 25, she had visited 43 countries. She spoke conversational French and serviceable Mandarin. She knew which hotel in Dubai had the best rooftop pool and which bar in Singapore served the most extraordinary gin. She knew the name of the best ramen shop in Tokyo and which queue to join and how long it was worth waiting. She was a woman who had built, deliberately and with great effort, exactly the life she had always wanted. Free, mobile, answerable to no timetable except the roster, fully, gloriously uncontained. The only problem, the problem that would eventually pull every thread of that beautiful, complicated life apart, was that Artemis Callahan was also, underneath all of that freedom, profoundly terrified of being alone. Not in the way that everyone fears loneliness, in a deeper, older way. The kind that gets built into a person in childhood, when love is abundant but attention is always being shared between 4 other siblings, and the space that is just yours is very small indeed. Artemis had never, in her adult life, spent more than 6 consecutive weeks without someone who was specifically hers, someone who was waiting, someone she was going back to. And so, as her roots expanded and her cities multiplied, she filled the spaces, quietly, carefully, with the same meticulous attention to logistics that made her exceptional at her actual job. James was in London, a financial analyst with a firm in Canary Wharf. He was 34, steady and reliable in the way that certain Englishmen are steady and reliable, not boring but anchored. He remembered the small things, the anniversary of the first date, the name of her mother, the coffee order she'd mentioned once in passing that appeared on her desk without comment every time she visited. He had introduced Artemis to his parents at Christmas. His mother had pulled her aside in the kitchen and said, "He hasn't looked like this since university. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." James was, in the truest sense of the word, in love with her. He was also planning to propose. He had the ring. He had been carrying it for 3 weeks in the inside pocket of his winter coat, looking for the perfect moment. He was not, he told his best friend, going to rush it. He wanted it to be right. Marco was in New York, a restaurant owner in the West Village, born in Naples, transplanted to Manhattan at 19, who had built a genuinely excellent Italian restaurant with 47 seats and a 6-week waiting list. He was 36, broad-shouldered, full of a particular kind of warm, chaotic energy that made every room feel more alive than it had been before he walked into it. He called Artemis his future. He had told his entire family about her. His mother in Naples had already begun referring to Artemis as La mia nuora, my daughter-in-law, which Marco found simultaneously embarrassing and exactly right. Marco was not a subtle man. He loved loudly and completely and without reservation. And he loved Artemis with everything he had. And then there was Jin, in Tokyo, a software architect at a technology firm in Shinjuku. 33 years old, quiet, methodical, deeply thoughtful. The kind of man who took 3 days to decide something and then never changed his mind. Jin had been learning basic Irish phrases to surprise her. Simple things, a greeting, a term of affection. Practicing them in the evenings in his apartment with a language app and a kind of patient dedication that made you understand, if you knew about it, exactly how seriously he took the people he cared for. He had given her a drawer in his apartment, stocked it himself, her brand of shampoo, the specific tea she liked, a spare phone charger in the right fitting. He had done this quietly, without announcement, and the first time she opened it and saw what was inside, she had gone into the bathroom so he wouldn't see her face. 3 men, 3 cities, 3 versions of Artemis Callahan, each one genuine, each one whole, each one completely unaware that the woman they were building a future with was simultaneously building 2 other futures, 3 time zones away. For 2 years the system held, and it was a system. Let's be honest about that. Artemis was not reckless, she was not careless. She did not stumble into this situation and then coast along hoping for the best. She managed it the way a skilled professional manages a complex operational challenge, with attention to detail, with contingency planning, with a level of disciplined organisation that, directed at literally anything else, would have been impressive. Different phone cases in different cities. She actually did this. A dedicated notes document for each man, updated after every visit, containing the things she had told him, the things she hadn't, the names of his friends, the state of his family relationships, the things he was worried about, the things he was looking forward to. She never mixed details. She never confused names. She never let the time zones collide. She had rules. No one visited her at the airport, no surprise travel. She cited crew scheduling restrictions that made spontaneous visits impractical. No shared platforms. Her social media was carefully curated, nothing locatable, no timestamps that contradicted her stated whereabouts. She was, in the most uncomfortable possible way, excellent at this. But here is the fundamental truth about systems built on concealment. They are only as strong as the human variables at their edges. And human beings, real, loving, attentive human beings, are not variables you can control. James noticed nothing. He trusted completely. Jin was observant but not suspicious. He knew Artemis had a complicated schedule. He respected the complexity. He waited. Marco, on the other hand, was exactly the wrong kind of person to be deceiving, because Marco was a man who paid attention to details, who remembered everything, who, when he loved someone, catalogued them without meaning to, their habits, their rhythms, their patterns. And over 2 years, some patterns weren't adding up. Small things, the frequency of her calls from certain cities, the way she sometimes sounded, not tired exactly, but occupied, like someone managing something he couldn't quite see. He hadn't said anything, but he had been watching. It started to collapse on a Tuesday in October. Marco decided to surprise her. He knew her roster. She had mentioned her London layover dates in passing, months before, in the way you mention things when you don't think the other person will hold on to them. Marco held on to everything. He booked a flight to London. He did not tell her. He arranged to be in the lobby of her hotel, the one she always used on London layovers, the one she described enough times for him to know which one it was, when she arrived. He was standing near the entrance when the cab pulled up. She stepped out. She was laughing at something, and the man who stepped out behind her had his hand on the small of her back in the easy, practiced way of a man who had done that 1,000 times before. Marco did not move. He watched James hold the door open for Artemis, watched her smile at him, watched the two of them cross the lobby with the comfortable body language of people who had arrived somewhere together many times, and he watched Artemis look up and see him. The look on her face in that moment, Marco would try later to find the right word for it. It was not guilt, exactly. It was not fear. It was the expression of a person watching something enormous and inevitable beginning to fall, who understands that they built the thing that is falling, and that there is nothing left to do but watch it come down. She did not move either. For a full 4 seconds, nobody moved at all. Marco sat down at the bar. He ordered something he did not drink. He waited. He watched James go upstairs. He watched Artemis stand in the lobby, still not moving, for a long moment after the lift doors closed. And then he walked over to her. He said, "Who is he?" She tried. You have to understand that. She tried to find something to say that would hold. An old friend, a colleague, someone from the crew. The words were there, she had plenty of them. She had spent 2 years finding words for every possible situation. But Marco was looking at her with an expression she had never seen from him before. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter and more total than anger. The expression of a man who already knows and is simply waiting for the courtesy of confirmation. She said, "Don't ask me to explain this right now." He said, "That's all the answer I need." He left the hotel. She did not chase him. He called her once that night. She did not answer. He called her the next morning. She answered on the 4th attempt and he asked her one question. "Is there anyone else?" There was a very long silence. She told him about Jin. Marco said nothing for a long time. Then he said, very quietly, "I need you to never contact me again." He hung up. That was the first domino. The information reached Jin through Marco. It had not taken long. Marco is the kind of man who dealt with pain by acting rather than sitting with it. He had found Jin the way anyone can find anyone now. A name half remembered. A company mentioned once. A LinkedIn profile that took 30 seconds to locate. He sent Jin a message. 3 sentences. All accurate. All the information Jin needed. Jin read the message on a Wednesday morning in Tokyo. He read it twice. He put his phone face down on his desk and sat very still for approximately 10 minutes. Then he went back to work, because Jin was the kind of man who, when the ground moved beneath him, stood still until he understood the new landscape before he took another step. When Artemis arrived at his apartment 2 days later, the drawer that had been hers was packed. Her shampoo was in a small bag beside the door. The spare charger was coiled neatly on top. Jin was sitting at the kitchen table with his hands folded, and he asked her to sit down. He did not shout. He asked her with careful precision to explain, not justify. He was clear about that distinction. Simply explain how this had happened, from the beginning, honestly. And Artemis Callahan, who had not been fully honest with anyone for 2 years, told him the truth. All of it. The fear underneath the freedom. The way the first overlap had happened almost by accident, and the way the second had followed with a terrible logic that she had not examined closely enough at the time. The system she had built. The effort it had taken. The moments, there had been moments, when she had nearly stopped, nearly chosen, nearly come clean. Jin listened to everything. He did not interrupt once. When she finished, he said, "Did you love us?" She said yes. Without hesitation, he looked at her for a long moment, then he said, "I believe that. I think that is the saddest part of all of this, that it was real and you still couldn't stop." He asked her to leave, she left. James found out last. The timeline simply worked that way. Geography, the sequence of events, the information travelling in the order it travelled. It came to him from Jin, who had found him the same way Marco had found Jin. A name, a firm, a LinkedIn profile. A message in his inbox on a Thursday morning that he opened without knowing what it was. Artemis called James before he could call her. She had decided, too late, far too late, but she had decided that he would hear it from her. She owed him at least the voice. At least that. The call lasted 22 minutes. She knows this because her phone logged it. James said almost nothing while she talked. He listened with the same quiet patience he brought to everything. And when she finished, he was silent for a very long time. Then he said, "I was going to ask you to marry me. I've been carrying the ring for 3 weeks. I was waiting for the right moment." He described where he'd planned to do it. A particular spot in Greenwich Park they'd walked through on a Sunday afternoon once, and she'd said she loved. He'd been going to take her back there. Artemis could not find a single word. He said, "I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because I think you should know what this was on my side of it, so you understand the full shape of what happened." He said goodbye. He wished her well. He meant it. That was the thing that haunted her most about James. He actually meant it. He left the restaurant where they'd had their first date, where he had chosen to tell her this because the place had meant something to him, and he walked out into the London evening and did not look back. She sat there alone for a very long time. In the weeks that followed, something happened that nobody around Artemis had predicted. She stopped. She requested a route reassignment, pulled herself off the London-New York-Tokyo rotation entirely, flew domestic European routes, short hops, early mornings, back by afternoon, for 3 months while she tried to figure out who she actually was when she wasn't performing for anyone. She went home to Cork for the first time in 4 years. She sat in her mother's kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon with the autumn light coming through the window and told her mother everything. Not a summary, not the version you tell people, the whole thing. Her mother made tea. She is, Artemis has said since, the kind of woman who makes tea when she needs time to think. She made a full pot, poured 2 cups, and then she sat down across from her youngest daughter and said, "You have been running since you were 16 years old. You never stopped long enough to find out if whatever you were running from was even still chasing you." Artemis asked what she thought she'd been running from. Her mother said, "The fear that if you stopped moving, people would leave. So you made sure you were never in one place long enough to find out." She was right. Artemis had known this somewhere below the system and the schedules and the phone cases for a long time. She had simply never stopped long enough to say it out loud. She started seeing a therapist in Cork. She kept seeing one after she went back to the city. She did the uncomfortable, necessary work of examining the person she had been and deciding, deliberately, who she intended to be instead. It was, she has said, the hardest journey she ever took. Harder than any of the 43 countries, because there was no cabin crew and no roster. Just her, and the truth, and the long, slow work of sitting with both. None of the 3 men came back. That is not how this story ends. This is not that kind of story. Marco moved on. He processed the way he did everything, loudly, expressively, with enormous feeling that he did not suppress. He talked to his family. He talked to his friends. He threw himself into his restaurant with the focused fury of a man who needed to pour his energy somewhere productive. Within 18 months, he was in a new relationship with a woman he had known for years. They got married. He posted a photograph from the wedding that showed him laughing in a way that made everyone who saw it feel genuinely happy for him. Jin was quieter in his recovery. He worked. He ran. He had started running in the months after, long distances on early mornings, which people who knew him recognized as his version of processing. He sent Artemis one message 6 months after she left his apartment. It said, "I hope you figure out what you were looking for." He meant it without bitterness. That was very much Jin. James left London. He took a position in Edinburgh and made a new start in a new city with the methodical, quietly determined approach he applied to everything. A mutual friend told Artemis, carefully, that he had met someone. She had asked. She was glad. She meant it completely. Artemis still flies. After 6 months on European routes and 3 months in Cork and a year of genuine, uncomfortable personal work, she requested a return to long haul. She got it. She still crosses time zones. She still knows the best ramen in Tokyo and the best bar in Singapore. The cities are the same. The freedom is the same. But she moves through them differently now. She is not filling anything. She is not running from anything. She is simply a woman who loves her work, crossing the world, finding out that the life you build honestly, even if it is smaller and quieter than the one you performed, is the only kind that actually holds you when you need it to. She told a colleague once on a night flight somewhere over the Atlantic, with the cabin dark and the passengers sleeping, that the most terrifying moment of the past 3 years was not any of the 3 conversations with the 3 men she had hurt. It was the first morning she woke up alone, with no system, no schedule, no version to perform, and realised she had absolutely no idea who she was. The colleague asked, "And what did you find out?" Artemis looked out at the dark sky for a long time. Then she said, "Someone I actually like." That was the surprise. That is the story of Artemis Callahan. 3 cities, 3 men, 2 years, and the long, honest journey back to herself. Drop a comment below. What do you think? Was Artemis a villain in this story? Or something more complicated than that? Because I think that question deserves a proper answer in the comments, and I want to know where you land. And if you are not already part of the Corporate Chaos Scandals family, hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a like, share it with someone today. We are here every single week with stories that make you feel, make you think, and make you look at the world just a little differently. I'll see you in the next one.